Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome to Tough Talking Thursday in an exclusive interview with the political leader of the Alternative National Congress, Mr. Alexander B. Cummings. I want to say, Mr. Cummings, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. Good to be with you and good to be with your listeners and folks who listen to you and follow you.
Thank you so much. We are glad to have you. This is your first time on Focus, no, second time on Focus on Liberia. And in a special way, we want to offer you a glass of water to say welcome and enjoy your stay with Focus on Liberia.
Thank you. Looking forward to it. I had a good discussion with Joyce earlier in the week, and it's good to be with you tonight.
Thank you. To start with, Mr. Cummins is the political leader of ANC. He, just like me, has been a resident of Metro Atlanta and a member of our community here, the Liberian Association of Metropolitan Atlanta. Mr. Cummings, anytime you stop by, please welcome to Lama meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a while, but look forward to visiting with you when I get back.
Thank you. I want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. This is Focus on Liberia. Mr. Alexander Cummings is our guest, and we're going to get right into it. First of all, how are you doing, Mr. Cummings, in the midst of COVID? How are you, your family, and even the people around you in this time of COVID?
Yeah, no, look, the immediate family is all fine. We thank God for that. And so far, most of the folks in my circle are doing okay. We have lost some friends in this COVID crisis, in this process. So it's a very serious process, as you know, but again, we thank God we're personally safe and the family is healthy as well.
Good. And especially, you travel a lot in Liberia. How is it in the other parts of the country, especially, when you're moving? There are a lot of people there, and there are people who want to see you. How everybody's doing?
So, Dennis, we're trying to be responsible with COVID. So we have actually slowed down a bit our travel around the country. And when we do still travel, we try to observe social distancing. We wear masks everywhere we go. We limit the crowds to 20 or less as recommended by the government. So we're really trying to be responsible in how we travel around the country. We don't want to expose ourselves, but more importantly, we don't want to expose the Liberian people. And we're taking COVID very seriously. So when I do travel, I follow all the health protocols around COVID.
Thank you. You need no introduction when it comes to who you are in the Liberian circle. But let's start by saying, tell us a little bit about your family, your parents, your sibling, and growing up in Point Four. Just a little bit about Mr. Cummings.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So my father, side of the family is from Maryland. My father was what you used to call outside child. He and his sister were born. Their father was married to another woman, and up until he's about 12 years old, he grew up in Harper, and then he moved to Monrovia to live with his much older sister, and he was a ward and went to high school, university. He did very well. He was a smart guy, finished first in his class. He started as a cadet at the Ministry of Education, so he's an educator. He used to do tutoring along the way, but he started as a cadet. He got a scholarship to go to the American University of Beirut, where he studied public administration. He came back, continued at the ministry. He went up to deputy minister at some point. And then Dennis, he actually left the government and went into the priesthood. He went in his 40s, early 50s, studied divinity, became an Episcopal priest. He was the first rector at Grace Episcopal Church in Clash. And so I grew up in the church. My mother was a midwife, finished high school, did midwifery, and then she used to sell women's clothing, women's underclothes. And they first started living on Camp Johnson Road. They had one room there, and then they moved to Point Four. Had a 4-bedroom house, 1 bathroom. My grandmother lived there, mother and father, my 3 sisters, my aunts, and other family members in this house. And then my parents moved us to Fiamma, grew up there. Moved there when I was about 12 years old, played football. Then I went to CBA demonstration first on clay shoot.
No, hold on. You talk about playing football. You talk about playing football. Yeah, I want to stop you because I'm number 7. So when I hear football, I want to know which wing you play.
So actually, I was a striker.
Okay.
I wasn't very good, I have to admit, but I played with a lot of enthusiasm.
Okay.
A lot of energy, but the skills were not great. And it's good to be honest about
Yeah.
good at what you're not good at. And so I actually played. I mean, it's a fact. But I discovered on that I didn't have the skills. So I decided to focus on my lesson and do other things because I didn't have the skills. But I played football growing up, and it was I think I would say a blessed upbringing. I got married when I was 25, and I've been married to my wife Teresa almost 40 years. We have 2 young adult children, my daughter Ayo, son Boykai. We have 4 grandchildren, 1 adopted, 3 biological. My mother is still alive. She will be 93 this August, Ayo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I got
Where is she?
My mother lives in Houston.
Okay.
Yeah. And my daughter Ayo, my son Boyka, as I mentioned, and with the grandkids. But growing up in Liberia for me was one where I was blessed to be in a family that had a lot of values, taught me hard work, integrity, were supported. My mother and father were very demanding parents. So they insisted, that we studied hard. As I mentioned, my father was a priest, so we had to go to church, every Sunday. Yeah, so it was a blessing. I tell people, Dennis, that I've been very blessed in life, blessed to be a Liberian, something I'm very proud of. Blessed to have half a brain, but those things were not my choice. Those are genuine blessings. Blessed to have had many different experiences. And so this is what I want to try to bring and share with our country, with our people, these experiences, these blessings. So give other young people, other Liberians, the same opportunities I was blessed to have.
Thank you. I see the young Alexander Cummins in CWA. I have some pictures here that I want to share.
Okay. Yes.
and also this one.
This one. This was the Meet the Challenge club at CWA.
Okay.
Maybe you're too young, but it was like a quiz show that used to be on Meet the Challenge, and I was part of the Meet the Challenge team. So that picture is from there. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me a little more about the young Alexander Cummins in CWA. What was besides the Meet the Challenge? I was fortunate to be part of the Meet the Challenge team at Monrovia College in 1988. In fact, I was the captain. So I'm familiar with that. So tell me more about your high school days, student politics, other extracurricular activities that you can remember.
Yeah, I used to always be in student politics. So through all my high school years, I was either, class senator or class treasurer. I was senior class president when we graduated from high school. Some people in my class were, some are deceased now. Lemuel Rios, who used to be head of immigration. The former Chief Justice, Gloria Musso Scott, was a classmate. Dr. Weddy Elliott Branell was also a classmate. She used to be Vice President Provost at University of Liberia. She actually works with me now at the Cummings Foundation. So these are some of the names. Robert Kennedy, who's also in Atlanta. Robert and I are still lifelong friends in high school. But as I said, I was in student politics, then it's class senator, class treasurer, class president. I tried to play football even in high school, but again, the talent
it didn't work out.
So we couldn't force it. I was in the High Y club as well. So those were some of the activities, extracurricular activity we did in high school.
Good. And let's go to your corporate credential, I will call it. Much of being said about you working with Coca-Cola and the Pillsbury Company. Tell me, but before that, you worked with the Liberia Development Bank. What was it like?
Yeah, so many people don't realize that I actually started my working career here in Liberia. I went to Cuttington, and then I finished undergraduate school, and I worked at LBDI, Liberian Bank for Development and Investment. And by the way, of many banks that existed back then, LBDI has still survived. And just for information, Dennis, for your audience, LBDI at the time was not a commercial bank. It was making loans primarily to businesses
Okay.
because and I'll tell a story if I may digress a little bit. The whole
Sure.
concept of development, they got an Inter-American Development Bank, they got a European Development Bank, they got an Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank. The concept of development banks, Liberian economies were involved in developing those concepts. And the reason why is in developing countries, you don't have stock markets, what you call long-term financing for
Mm.
businesses. So there was a need to develop these banks to loan money, particularly to business, but not just short-term loans like commercial banks, not like for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, but for 2, 3, 4 years. And so I was a project analyst at a development bank. David Vinton, who at one point was central bank governor in Liberia, David Vinton was the
Yeah.
project manager in the department I worked for at the time. Mr. Silibi, Elias Silibi, was
Yeah.
president of the bank when I was there. He also became central bank governor, minister of finance. So those are some of the people who worked for and worked with back at development. So I was an analyst. I actually got to travel around Liberia then, looking at projects, some agricultural projects. I remember going to Wanjama, going to Banga. So this was between 1978 and 1980, just to date myself in
Mm.
terms of years. So it was great experience working at development bank. Started my career in financing, and I studied finance and economics in undergraduate school. So it was a nice fit and a nice
Mm.
first job. And then I went to graduate school. Um, and then because of the war, like many Liberians, it was difficult, unable to come back. And then I joined the Pillsbury Company, where I started as a financial analyst. So started very at the entry level, and then I worked my way up. Dennis, at 36 years old, I was the youngest officer at Pillsbury at the time. I became vice president of finance for Pillsbury International. And I say to many Liberians, it was really hard work. I would start with blessing, but
Mm.
it was also hard work, discipline, tenaciousness to get to that level at that young age. It wasn't because it was my father's company, my mother's company, family, those things. But it was blessings and then hard work. And then I joined the Coca-Cola company in Nigeria. I ran the business there. Then I ran half of Africa from Kenya. Uh, and then I ran all of Africa, London and South Africa. My last job, it was a global job. As you know, Coke is headquartered in Atlanta. That's I moved there and we covered the entire world. And I was the number 2 executive at that global company.
Mm.
And I try to help people compare big businesses to government, and they're
Okay.
most similar than people think. So you're managing a budget, and at Coca-Cola, my budget was literally hundreds and into the billions of dollars that you have to manage and make choices and prioritize. You
Right.
have to manage a team of people. You have to select them, motivate them, challenge them. In government, you have to do the same thing. You have to pick the team to deliver the results. Then you have to deliver results in corporations. You have to deliver for your customers, for your consumers. You report to a board of directors. In government, you have your voters and you have the legislature. That's who the executive report to the first branch of
Right.
government. He or she accountable. Um, and so I've managed large, complex organization with success, and those things are applicable. You have ministries in government,
Right.
in corporations. You have divisions. They can be countries, they can be businesses, or they can be functions like human resources, finance,
Right.
treasury, marketing, etc. So a lot of similarities, and I've done it on a global scale,
Right.
on a massive scale, and again, did it successfully with integrity.
Yeah.
You know, so my corporate experience, I think, prepares me well to bring a different perspective to how we can move and lead our country and do things differently.
So Mr. Cummings, most of that experience has been outside of Liberia, which anyone can look at in a number of ways. Some may see it that that's a good thing. Some may see it that, well, does he have experience working here in Liberia? So with the vast international business and finance experience that you got, will you consider that as an asset or something that you think, or voters may think that takes away from what you bring to the table?
No, I think it's clearly an asset, and I think increasingly, Dennis, more and more voters feel that way as well. Because the reality is, the experiences of many of our Liberian politicians, etc., has delivered the results we have today. And we all know today Liberia is challenged. I mean, it's a fact. We'll be 174 years
Yeah.
a few weeks on July 26th. And we are among the least developed countries in the world. We are among I think, the 5 or 10 poorest countries in the world. And these are just facts, not something we are proud of, not something I'm happy to say, but they're just the reality, the facts. And these are not Alex Cummings fact, a CPP fact or CDC fact. These are just facts. So I think increasingly Liberians understand that you can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. And by the way, at this time, my working career here, I managed a business in Nigeria. Nigeria is a much bigger country, more complicated, right? But it's also an African. I managed Coca-Cola Africa, so I understand the challenges that we face in Africa, right? Challenges are similar. The other African countries are a bit further along, a bit more developed than we are, making progress, but have better leadership. But those challenges are the same. No power, no water in Nigeria when we lived there, no running water, no power, bad traffic, and yet we navigated that quite successfully. And those challenges are here in Liberia today. So I think that outside-in perspective, bringing different ideas, challenging us. I used to say to my Nigerian colleagues, yes, traffic bad, yes, electricity is a problem, yes, running water, but unfortunately we can't control that. So let's focus on what we can control, and let's plan for the fact that there will be no electricity tomorrow. So how do you still achieve your results without electricity? And we were able to turn our business around by just being a bit more demanding on ourselves, not making excuses for ourselves. They're not letting the environment be the excuse. The environment is real, it's challenging, but if we just keep accepting that as the reason why, we will never progress. You will never move forward. So what do you do despite the challenge? And so I actually think my outside experience will be very helpful, very beneficial to how we move our country forward. And then it's about building a team.
Yeah.
So we will have a team of people with various experiences, some experiences here, which is valuable to know. So things that work and don't work. So this will not be just Alexander Cummings, by the way. This will be a team. This will be a presidency, a team of people that will work together to transform our country.
And some say to that, some say, well, their business like Coca-Cola or Pillsbury is for profit, right? Where, whatever you do, you're expecting a return. You fire people that are not performing, people get paid. And so, but for a country, if you take power water to my people in Dudwicken, you're not expecting any return. So it's kind of different. How do you, transition from this for profit to a place where, there's, as they say, there's nothing working, there's no system in place, and in fact, you don't even expect a return for some of the things that you do?
No, but Dennis, it's not about expecting return or profit. It's about, are you delivering results for your people? Are you putting running water in your town? That's an objective. You deliver the results. The return will be your people will be healthier. You will take care of waterborne diseases. So not all returns got to be financial. Their returns, their returns, the upliftment for the country, the economy will grow. Liberians will make more money. Other people will start businesses. So you cannot measure return only in terms of dollars and cents, right? what's more important is your ability to deliver goals and objectives. And if delivering water to your town is an objective, I've proven that's something I can do. And we'll measure the return differently, right? If it's
Yeah.
electricity or putting a road or building a school, it's the consistency with which you deliver results. You make commitments, you make promises, and then you deliver. And the measure of return will be different. You get re-elected, you get voted again, but more importantly,
Right.
your goal is to uplift your people.
Yeah.
That was the goal. That's the return. So the
I,
return,
I, I like that answer. Mr.
yeah.
Cummings, let's turn to ANC. You're the political leader of the ANC. You noted for saying, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. The whole concept of political leader is new in Liberia. And the way I refer to it is lifetime standard bearer. I think the first time I really heard it and someone said, no, that's not true, was from CDC. When I first heard political leader, this whole concept of political leader is from the status quo. It's something that is strange. Why are you using that title?
Because you gotta have some designation, some title for the leader of any institution. In the case of government, the title is president. In the case of the head of a ministry, the title is minister. So in any organization, you have designated titles for different roles, right? So in a political party, you got secretary general, you got chairman, you
Right.
got vice chair, and you have political leader. So it is a designation that says you're the political head of the party. In the case of the ANC, our constitution says that when we go into election, is when you select your standard bearer. And the political leader does not automatically become the standard bearer. He or she has to be voted at a convention of partisans of the party to get that designation as standard bearer. So the political leader title is title that the leader of the party carries in between elections. When you go to elections, then you elect a standard bearer. And again, it's not an automatic, it's not a fait accompli. So it's a designation that explains. And in my case, it's not a perpetual role that I'm going to have. Is a role that will allow me to contest for the standard bearership of the ANC. And on that basis, I will contest for the standard bearership of the CPP. As you know, we're in the CPP. And then it's fortunate we'll get the opportunity to lead our country. So it's a designation that describes who leads the party.
This ANC came out of the CDC, or is a breakaway of the CDC. So obviously, when you come out of something, you expect some similarities. How have you been working to move away from this for some CDC characteristics? And have you been able to accomplish that, or you are still somehow like the CDC?
Well, I guess the first thing, Dennis, we have to realize that we are all Liberians, and many of the attributes you find in one party are in other parties.
Okay.
Right? Now, of course, you got to differentiate yourself. You got to show why you're different.
Right.
But my point is, we're all from the same pool, if you will. Now, some fish are bigger than others. Some are, I don't know, brighter than others or whatever. Or some are smarter than others, right? So, and you're correct that the ANC is a spin-off from the CDC, but that was the origins. And we still got many former CDC partisans who are ANCers and who are in leadership as well. But I think what we've done that is different is I think we are very I would say fairly organized political party. We are trying to make sure that our political discourse is more constructive. It's not perfect. We still got some of the same behaviors. We're trying to what I call demilitarize our youth, because I think that's something that's came over from the CPP, and
Yeah.
we have some of that in the party still, Dennis, but I think less so than say it was, a few years ago. We've gone through a peaceful transition in the leadership of the party. That wasn't always the case in the CDC, and the ANC has had two conventions where some leaders have been re-elected and some have changed, and it's happened peacefully. So I think, another difference. So with progress, and I keep saying, our democracy is new as a country. You got to crawl, walk, and then run. And we're still between our crawling and walking stage as a democracy, and the same is true for the ANC.
What attracted you to the ANC, initially, or was it just the last bus at the station, so you have to ride it to get to the presidency?
No, actually, Dennis, I could have come and started my own political party, which is what many people do, as you know. They start their own political party. And I was intentional, I was determined that I felt, look, there are a lot of political parties in Liberia. Why start another one? Why not look at the list of parties, read their manifesto, read their vision, their mission, their beliefs, and see if there's one that you can identify with and join them and help to work with them to build an institution. So I could have, start like many other folks, start my own political party, and so, excuse me, in some ways it would have been easier, frankly. But what attracted me to the ANC was I like the mission vision. It talks about Liberia first. It talks about ANC is uh, a place where everybody is somebody. Simple but very powerful words. It has a series of beliefs in the people, not in government. Believe that development starts with the people and engaging them and getting their points of views. So these were all things I looked at the ANC. I looked at some of the people in the ANC, the leadership. I thought we had some compatibility, and fortunately, they were willing to accept me. We worked together, and in a relatively short period of time, uh, Dennis, the ANC is a recognized political institution in Liberia. It's one of the newest of the parties, meaning compared to UP, which has been around a very long time, Liberty Party, which has been around a long time as well. The ANC, I believe, was officially registered in 2013. They started in 2012, I think 2013, had, I think, one candidate in 2014. So in a relatively short period in the life of politics, the ANC is now a household name, a household word in Liberian politics. And thanks to my colleagues working together, we've made it so.
The ANC is part of the CPP, that's the Collaborating Political Parties. And as far back as my recollection, when after the first round of the election 2017, some of these parties sued and went to the Supreme Court. That was the ALP, the UP, the LP, and the ANC. Would you say that was the birth of the CPP?
It's a very good question. I haven't thought about it that way, but yeah, perhaps. In retrospect, that perhaps was the beginnings of some form of collaboration. Uh, I mean, it wasn't intentionally so, but maybe coincidentally, accidentally, or providence, right? Perhaps that was the genesis, but it wasn't, when we did that, it wasn't the intent when we got together. And then just in full transparency, we the ANC sort of fell off. We were initially in the suit, as you suggested, but we did not stay with that group when they went all the way to the Supreme Court. And again, it's important to be transparent with Liberians in that respect. But we were part of the initial lawsuit get in terms of the elections in 2017.
Right. The reason I ask is sometimes when I look at the ANC, the CPP, and what it has been through, I can think that maybe this concept was not well thought out. Maybe it happened just by chance when they started with this Supreme Court case. Because if you agree, it's really been a rough ride with the CPP. Will you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you define rough, right? But Dennis, anything worthwhile is never going to be easy, right?
Yeah.
And I think us coming together made sense. It's something Liberian people wanted. I think in the history of our politics, whether it was the CDC, the Coalition for Democratic Change, because they came together with the MPP, the LPDP, other parties, and the UP was the consolidation of, I believe, LAP and the whole Unity Party. So the idea of political parties joining is not a new concept to our country. Yes, people talk about the famous get together at Hotel Africa that broke apart, but people forget that there were other coalitions that have assumed power in our country. And so bringing four independent parties together was never going to be easy. And it's been a challenge, but I think it's okay. I mean, you gotta, sometimes you gotta, in a team building, you gotta storm, right? Before you norm, before you form, all of this. And so it's been a challenge, but I think we're all committed to the CPP holding together. I think it's not only because it will help increase our chances of, making president. We are one-term president. I think that's the way we should govern. I think we should govern in a big tent. We should inclusively, because then we're going to have to make some hard decisions. We're not going to be able to do everything, right?
Mr. Cummings, you talk about governing, as a big tent, but I see that you have closed the doors on other parties, or maybe I'm mistaken. Can other political parties join the CPP? Because I don't see that. Can you make that tent bigger?
Yeah, of course. We absolutely can make that tent bigger. And we want to make that tent bigger. So we've not closed the doors to other institutions, other individuals joining the CPP. Because yes, we want that tent as big and as broad as we possibly can make it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Focus on Liberia. We are in an interview with the political leader of the ANC, Mr. Alexander Cummings. And let me let you know this interview is live on Heart FM 107.9 in Monrovia. Mr. Cummings, individual political parties of the CPP have been going solo lately. I don't know if you noticed that as well. We don't see much of acting as a unit like we saw, and I'm not trying to throw a jab at anyone here, that we saw under your leadership. The individual political parties are responding to issues now. Does it have to do with the current CPP leadership, or that's how the CPP roll?
No, I don't think it has to do with the current CPP leadership per se, Dennis. I remind your listeners, Liberians, that the CPP is a collaboration of independent parties. And we deliberately said, look, before we jump to a grand coalition, which is our ultimate goal, let's try to collaborate around issues of common interest. And so one good example is we had a common slate of candidates for the past election in December.
Yeah.
But our framework agreement, if you read it, if Liberians read it, it says a collaboration of independent parties. And then the other dynamic, I mean, it's real dynamic. We got to be practical and real and honest with ourselves, is that, there is a competition for the standard bearership of the CPP, and that also drives some of the independents. And I don't think it should be viewed as a bad thing necessarily. And by the way, when you read the different points of views, they're actually similar. They're not dramatically different, right? So these are just the realities of where we find ourselves. I don't think we should perceive that as a bad thing necessarily, that somehow that means the CPP will just fall apart or will implode. I think we all recognize that we are better off together, particularly when it comes to the elections, electoral politics. And so I wouldn't overread into the fact that in some cases we issued separate statements. And then we read those statements, as I said, they're not too different one from the other. So for example, the whole issue of, war crimes court. Yes, the LP, the ANC, UP issued statements, but they all supported war.
And that's why I'm wondering, why can it be one statement if it is all the same?
Yeah, it probably could have been and should have been, but again, as I mentioned, that this other dynamic is taking now, and again, I don't think we should view it as a bad thing necessarily.
Oh no, and I'm not implying that. But fairly speaking, CPP was active, visible, and new, and I'm taking those words out of your framework. It was active, visible, and new under your leadership. you won some seats, especially in that election. Under your leadership, CPP has a couple of wins. What will you credit your success to as chairman of the CPP?
Well, first thing I would say, it's a team success.
Okay.
It's a collective success, Dennis. And although I was chair at the time, it would be disingenuous for me to say it was just me. It was a team success. And there were challenges during that period too, as you may know. We had, for example, and other challenges.
The Taiwan situation.
The Taiwan situation with Edith, who was also running. As you know, they were competing for the CPP nomination in the county. So we had challenges, but collectively, we worked together and we delivered the results we did. Something we're proud of. We got the CPP certified by the National Elections Commission. We stood up the different organs of the CPP, the National Advisory Committee, the Secretariat, the Legislative Caucus. As you mentioned, we competed. We had 15 candidates, 5 of which were women. I remind Liberians, the CDC had no women candidates in the 2020 elections. We won seats. The opposition collectively, won 11, 12 out of the 15 seats. So it was a big win for the opposition. And the CPP won 6 of those seats in that process. So we did quite well collectively. Proud of the time we served as chairman. And when our tenure were up, we were very willing, and of course we had to. I didn't want a day to go by without turning over as agreed, because we wanted to set the right example about transfer of power as agreed in the agreement.
Let's come to the elections. Has the fight for the standard bearership of the CDC, has that fight started?
I wouldn't use the word fight, Dennis, but
political speaking.
I know. I'm giving you a hard time. But yeah, the competition has started for the CPP nomination. Yes. And just to remind your listening audience, in a framework agreement, we laid out a process for this election. We said 2021, we would try to reach consensus. And consensus means all 4 parties have to agree to a candidate. If consensus is not reached, then we go to a convention. Some people call it a primary, where we have equal number of delegates who will attend, and that convention will select the standard bearer. Prior to the convention, we said we'll do some polling. We call it VPS, voter perception survey, where we'll talk to Liberian people about their preferences.
So where are we now?
So we're still in that consensus building stage per the agreement. And again, if we don't reach consensus by the end of this year, then the convention and VPS process will kick in. We can collectively, if the 4 parties agree, we can accelerate that process. So there's nothing that stops us. If all 4 want to move faster, we can do so. Otherwise, that's the time period, and we kind of in the consensus building, and a bit of the competing process, if you will, making our case to our partisans and to Liberian people at large.
Mr. Boakai, that is VP Joseph Newman Boakai, said he's the only one in the CPP that can take President Weah down. Is that a true statement?
No, I disagree with that. I think anybody who emerges as a standard bearer of the CPP will make President Weah a one-term president. I think anybody who emerges as our standard bearer will win President Weah. So I disagree with the statement.
What's the strategy of making President Weah a one-term president?
So it's first of all, the President Weah is doing a lot to help us with that strategy by his performance. So by any objective measure, Dennis, any objective measure, Liberia is going backwards. Any economic measure, all the human development index measures, Liberia is going backwards. So Mr. Weah is doing a good job of making himself a one-term president. Beyond that, we have to ensure that the CPP sticks together, and we feel a candidate that we all support. And then we got to make our case to Liberian people. And through our actions as the CPP, and of course the case we make, the policies we'll offer to the Liberian people is what I believe will encourage them to support the CPP.
Senator Darius DeLong has been a rock star in the CPP. I mean, big win in Monserrato. Of late, Senator DeLong has been making one mistake after the other. What I see as enforced errors. The latest being this fiasco with business class and his public apology. You know, some may call it flimsy because they say, "Oh, this is just taking attention away." Has someone in the CPP, leader, what advice do you have for Senator Dillon?
Yeah, look, the first thing I would say is, a little disappointed that, at usual words, that Darius had his own false error, if you will. Yeah, surprised and disappointed is the right word. But I will also say that I give him credit for acknowledging the mistake and admitting that he made a mistake. Many of our politicians.
Mm-hmm. After he was caught, right?
Well, it doesn't matter because
okay.
many people get caught red-handed and they still deny, and they still rationalize, and they still make excuses. It's just a fact. Even though we know they've done something and the proof is there and they're caught, and they still go all around deny and never admit the mistake. So on the one hand, disappointed, surprised Darius did that. On the other hand, I applaud him for acknowledging it and then therefore moving forward. And that's something I hope others emulate. First, I hope others don't do it in the first place. And I know this will not happen to Darius again, but we should acknowledge and applaud the fact that he admitted and he's going forward, because many people, not just in politics in Liberia, will still be there today, despite people denying this stuff. And Darius came and admitted, and I think he said his mother would be embarrassed. And I think we should acknowledge that. I don't know what else we want anybody to do or say.
But do you see a pattern here? And this is going to, and what do you think will be going to be the impact on the CPP?
A pattern in terms of what, Dennis?
In terms of these enforced errors, he coming up to apologize. He said this the next day, I'm sorry. The last time he was going to stone the president convoy, he came in reneged. There was a lady who they say, just to see your house burn. I mean, he used some, he didn't want to talk about it. The next day he apologized. He came out, took 15,000 and said, "Hey, I got him." And he keeps apologizing. And this is biting into his popularity, don't you think?
Yeah, look, I think Dylan is learning as he goes. Look, we'll see what happens going forward with him, and what he does and what he says. I think there's a learning process here for him. And look, I wish him well, and I'm assuming, Dennis, that going forward, to use your words, he will have fewer unforced errors. But in life, in politics, we all make mistakes, we all make errors. None of us are perfect, and I think Darius is a high-profile guy, and so whatever he does or says is amplified more than anybody else. I think he recognizes that now, and I think going forward, I hope and I think we'll see a different Darius.
Have you made some errors too?
Yes, I've made errors in life. I'm not going to point out my own errors here. I'll let you point it out, and then I'll speak to it. But I assure you, none of us are perfect.
From the stimulus package to testing and President Weah's inability to take the vaccine publicly for us to see that, the COVID-19 situation is obviously not being handled well by this government. What are the issues you see with the governor of this country, and what will you do differently?
So I will talk about COVID separately, and because I've said I don't want to politicize the COVID crisis, and I'll stick to that. There are things President Weah could be doing different and better with regards to the COVID. And, just today we delivered a set of recommendations, but I don't want to politicize and use COVID as a political weapon. I think this virus does not discriminate. Whether you CDC, CPP, man, woman, Muslim, Christian, So we all need to, at this point in time, work together and focus on defeating the virus, particularly the spread of the virus. But more broadly, Dennis, and I've said this on other occasions, is that, as I mentioned earlier, the country is going backwards. It's just a fact. Unemployment is up, prices, inflation is up, the economy is contracting. The list goes on and on and on and on. Businesses are shrinking or shutting down or leaving. All the governance processes are being unraveled. The integrity institutions are not being funded. They're not being staffed with the right people. Most of the government ministries and agencies got political appointees with not the right experiences and with not the right skills. Liberians are struggling, Dennis. They are hungrier than they were before. You travel around the country, the schools don't have supplies, the health centers, even before COVID, basic medications and drugs are not available in clinics across Liberia. These are facts. These are not Alex Cummings facts. These are not CPP facts. These are just facts, right? So in a Cummings administration, in a CPP-led administration, we will make sure, one, we stop the corruption because it's contributing to much of our ills. There's this leaky bucket that we got to plug the holes. And by doing that, we have the funds to invest in these basic things, making sure that health centers have the materials they need, making sure civil servants are getting paid on time and regularly, making sure we restore confidence into the governance of our country. The integrity institutions need to be funded and well-staffed. The whole rule of law, the judiciary, we need to revisit because that's the foundation of any society. So these are all things that will be different, that we'll work on to, again, return Liberia to a place where Liberians have predictability. The international community, we are no longer the laughing stock of the international community. So there will be a lot of work to do when we replace President Weah. But we have the people. Liberians are smart. We identify the right talents. Look, Dennis, I meet a lot of groups of Liberians around the country, all socioeconomic classes, and the solutions are there. The ingenuity is there, and it's all about how we harness it, right? How we engage hearts and minds of Liberians. One of the things we talk about all the time is how do you use, in no particular order, how do you use music, arts and culture and theater and religion and sports to influence how we behave, how we think about ourselves, right? How we act towards one another. How do we define what Liberia is? I was on the station with Jackie and we talked about what is Liberia, what does it mean to you, right? Using these tools, and it may seem soft, but I believe we have to be intentional about using all of these tools to help change hearts and minds. And this is something that we would do if given the opportunity to serve our people as their leader.
You have obviously evolved when it comes to the question of War and Economic Crimes Court and the TRC recommendations. I remember in 2017, you said, if we talk about retribution, we are looking backwards and this is going to consume us. What has been responsible for this evolution, if you have any epiphany?
Yes, and let me, you said it, but I want to repeat it because I don't apologize for it. Dennis, my views have evolved. My views have changed around War Economic Crimes Court. And Dennis, as a leader, you have to be open to listening, learning, and evolving your thinking. And you can't be dogmatic about your thinking in the face of new information. There are some things you got to be dogmatic about, like integrity. So your views on integrity cannot or should not evolve, right? You should be honest about it.
Yeah.
But what has happened for me is two things that have contributed to the evolution of my thinking. One is the lack of closure for many Liberians around war crimes. The stories I've heard from Liberians here in Liberia, from Liberians in the diaspora, they need disclosure. They need some acknowledgement of the crimes that were committed. And
Mm.
just business as usual, just carrying on is not enough. And for us to move forward as a country, not only for those individuals, but as a country, as a nation, we need to bring closure to this, tragic era in our country's history. And hearing those stories has said to me, you know what, we can't just gloss
Mm.
over this and move forward. The second epiphany, if you will, as I look at the impunity with which things happen in our country, um, whether it's stealing or rape or even killing people, the fact that we live in a country where there appears to be no consequences for anything you do, the impunity got to stop. And I've said, you know what? There got to be consequence for this tragic period in our history as as the foundation for us moving forward.
Yeah.
So we end this era of impunity, right?
Right.
And then we can begin to look ahead, to look forward, etc.
So,
And
so
so,
Mr. Cummings,
uh-huh.
someone may ask how you didn't know this. Because like some of us whose parents were killed, I mean, we've been crying. So if you say at that time you didn't know, you didn't hear those stories, or is it now that you have realized that there's been impunity, or it's just the degree?
It's the degree and the impunity. So yes, we all knew the stories, Dennis. We all heard the stories. I didn't have immediate relatives, but I had distant relatives impacted as well. I had friends impacted as well. So we absolutely knew the stories, but the degree um, and then the impunity with which people are running around and doing stuff today is the combination of those two things that said to me, to bring closure, we have to face this part of our history.
You've been criticized for having a board on Cummings Foundation that is not diverse. That's the criticism I've heard. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so this is part of the challenge in our country when the construct for how we think about people, how we judge people, is based on ethnicity, is based on last names, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's part of what has kept the country back. When we thought about the foundation, Dennis, um, we never thought of, because it was not a political lens. It was not about, we're looking for Liberians who we felt could contribute, who we felt we were willing to contribute, either skills, ideas, their networks, their net worth, all of those things. And there was never a construct about, ethnicity, last name, et cetera, et cetera. And the other thing I would say to you is the beneficiaries of for the foundation cuts across political, religious. So the foundation doesn't ask whether you're Christian or you're Muslim, or you Gola Crown, Gio, Gribble, or you ANC, or you CDC, or whatever you are. If you qualify for the foundation scholarships or whatever the foundation offers, there is no discrimination. There's no thought about, who you are, who you're from, etc., etc. And then I would argue some people look at last names of people and they make assumptions
Mm.
about ethnicity and that kind of stuff. And I think that's incorrect, that's unfair. But just the basic strong construct, even thinking that way, I think it's part of why Liberia is today. And I think, Dennis, we need to have this conversation about this, country, Congo, indigenous, however you want to describe it. We need to talk about it
Right.
because it's something has held us back.
Mm.
People talk about constituencies and think about tribe. That's the wrong place to start. Constituency for me is all the young people that are struggling to find and to have skills. That cuts across tribes. When I travel around Liberia, Dennis, every county people are poor and struggling. Everybody, it doesn't discriminate, right? And that is how we need to think about it. That's how we need to address it. And I think it's a political weapon. People try to turn what you try to do good, to try to turn it against you, to make what to make good look ugly, and that's what's happening with this particular situation. But we are undeterred. I'm undeterred. Families undeterred. We're committed to the country, committed to the foundation, and we're committed to providing opportunities for all of our people, regardless of where they are, who they're from. It doesn't matter.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Focus on Liberia. We are in conversation with Mr. Alexander Cummings. He's the political leader of the ANC. And this interview is also live on Hot FM 107.9 in Monrovia. I want to talk about some issues when, let's say, Mr. Cummings is president, and I want to read them for clarity. The allocation for education under the 2021 special budget is 1.9 million, with a projection of 3.7 million in 2022. This is about 13% of the national budget, which is commendable. Yet, our children are not learning, and the physical infrastructure in schools is inadequate. Just recently, Front Page Africa highlighted a story of young kids traveling in canoes to get to school. What plans does a Cummings administration have for creating an enabling educational environment in Liberia?
So the first thing we need to do, Dennis, is we got to find the money, find the resources to allocate to education. And so, I've talked about the need to increase our national budget from the full $500 million number to $1 billion. And we can talk about that separately if you want.
Yeah.
But the reason why it was important to do that to start there is because we can talk about education, we can talk about health, we can talk about infrastructure. If we don't have the money, it's all talk. We're wasting our time, right? And unless we got the monies and resources, we're not going to be able to improve our educational system and structure. So that's the first point. We got to find the money and the resources to do it. The second thing I would say to you is we got to prioritize and make choices. We cannot do everything, even in education. And the priorities for me, education will be first teachers training, because with all qualified teachers, well paid, you will not get good output. You will not get educated students in any field. The second priority for me, education, is vocational training to create skills for our people. Many of our young people go to university, other tertiary institutions is not suited for them, and we need to develop vocational skills, give people other options. So that's another priority. And the third priority for me is primary education, starting with the young folks at very early age, and not only teaching them literacy but values, integrity, all of those things, right? So that's what we prioritize. That doesn't mean we'll not spend some money on university education or secondary education, but we got to make sure, we got to prioritize. But the most important is to find the monies and resources. And then, we got to show the Liberian people that we value education. So we need to put qualified, educated people in roles of responsibility so that our young people can aspire to be like a Dennis Jah or an Alex Cummings, who is educated, who worked and got to where he or she got, because we want to have that aspiration for our people. We want to make sure that, again, we take waste out of education, right? So we can find the money to put into these priorities I talked about. So those are the kinds of things we'll do different. We will make choices, we will focus, we'll prioritize, we'll find more resources, more money to invest in education so we can improve the quality of education. And then again, we want our people to see that when you are educated, when you've earned it, that you get rewarded for that education, as opposed to somebody else who didn't do it because they are my political friend. Even though they aren't educated, they get the jobs.
I see your emphasis is on the money, finding the money. You place a lot of emphasis, because I have other questions there, but So let's deal with this money thing first. You know, how you're going to find the money. You talk about raising the budget from 500 million to a billion. Can you lay out some concrete steps as to how you're going to find this money or how you're going to raise this billion? And if you have that plan, where can I find it?
So I will give you some concrete steps in terms of how we're going to do that. And first of all, I just like to remind people to put things in context. That that number is not out of sight, and I want Liberians. And so, give me a little bit of time on this question, please.
Okay,
Because
sure.
I will get to your specifics. But I want Liberians to be more aspirational for ourselves. And the idea of just sitting around this $4-5 million number and somehow debating it all the time is a conversation I don't like to spend any time on. You know, people say, 80% of the budget is recurring expenses, and you're right. But it's 80% of 500 million. If the number was a billion, that number will be 40%. We have a different conversation. If that number was 1.5 billion, it'll be 20%, right? So my point is, let's start at a high level. Let's just think more aspirational about what's possible, what we can do. Let's not limit ourselves. One. The second thing I would say to put that number in context, Dennis, is that, and this is a simplistic analogy, but it's not an unimportant one, that if you look at Ghana is about 5 times our population, and their annual budget is somewhere between $8 and $10 billion, somewhere in that range. I won't be too far off. So if you take a fifth of, if it's 10 billion, then you say, well, then Liberia should be at 2 billion because we're a fifth of the population. Now, it's not that simple an analogy. There could be many reasons why we should be higher or lower than that number. But it just puts in perspective for people that these things are not impossible. It's not, right? So that's the second thing I want to put in terms of a premise for why we need to be thinking this way. Then in terms of the areas we're going to look at to get to this $1 billion, and I've said over 3 to 5 years, so it will not happen overnight. The first area we look at, Dennis, is sort of curbing this thing called corruption. I think there's a lot of leakage that happens that if reinvested, redeployed into more productive sector, it will help you drive revenue. So we got to look at this corruption thing. One, it's very specific.
Can you put a number to it? If you plug those holes, are you going to get, let's say, $100,000 from plugging those holes? Those kind of numbers I want if you have.
No, I don't. And we've got a team of people who actually, because this question keeps coming up, right, and I'm very confident we can get to $1 billion, even more. So we actually got a team of people who are working on that as we speak, so we can put numbers to it. But I've concluded, they've concluded that these are the buckets, these areas, and let me finish listing them.
Okay, sure. I'll be patient.
No, it's okay. It's okay. That will get us from where we are to the $1 billion. And then I promise you that we'll attach numbers to those areas. So the corruption is one piece. The second piece you need to look at is, what are your current sources of revenue? Okay. Where do you currently get money from? And I will tell you where they are. In no particular order, we get money from our mineral resources. We have what they call MDAs, Mineral Development Agreements, with the Mittels, the China Unions of the world. We get some money from forestry. We get money from maritime. We get money from customs and excise duties. And so we have to look at all of these areas, Dennis, and say, are we getting maximum value from all of these areas? Are we getting the full value? Is our tax collection, the royalty collection from these areas? I don't believe we're getting full value. I think we can get more from all of these areas. There's some corruption happening in those areas as well, but beyond that, are we fully enforcing what we're getting from all those areas? Next thing I would say is, next bucket is our whole efficiency of our tax collection. Not talking about
Mr. Cummings, if you may, can I stop you? So, because I want to touch on the mineral before you go to the tax, because currently for minerals, right, it's not being controlled by government, right? People, it's not like Ghana that they're in control of the gold. In Liberia, is private people, they go in these minerals. So how will you get money from, let's say, gold, diamond, and all these minerals? What are you going to do differently?
Well, first of all, I'll say that the Ghanaian government also has agreements. They have partners as well that do the oil and the minerals and that kind of stuff. So, but what we need to do is we have agreements, Dennis, that we're supposed to get royalties and other income from our minerals. We need to make sure we are getting what we're due. I'm not saying we are not, but I'm saying we will make sure we're getting maximum value, even from just the current agreements. I would also say to you that much of our gold and diamonds are mined by individual Liberians, and that's not something we want to stop. But we want to make sure again that whatever appropriate taxes or royalties, whether it's an individual Liberian or a corporation that's mining our gold and diamonds, that we're getting, the government is getting its fair share of revenue. That is not just slipping across the border. So enforcement, we need to know who is actually doing it.
Exactly.
Are they registered? Are we getting our share, et cetera, et cetera? Those are things we need to do and enforce that will allow us to get more revenues. Well, I do not believe we're getting full value today from those resources, right? And again, we'll put numbers to that to dimensionalize what we think the opportunities are from there. Then I was mentioning the efficiency of tax collection. I'm not suggesting we increase taxes at this point. In fact, in some ways, you can lower tax and get more compliance and actually collect more money. So it's about the efficiency of the tax collection system. Then it's about how you grow the economy, right? How you take the monies you find from corruption and you reinvest it, say, in agriculture. How you develop new sectors like tourism, ecotourism I talk about. You develop new sectors, you create more jobs, you generate more revenues. And so how do you expand the economy? How do you create new sectors that can create jobs, that can create revenues? That's how you will grow the national budget. That's how you will create jobs for Liberians. And we should not believe this cannot be done. It's been done in other countries in the neighborhood, in the Ivory Coast, in Ghana, in Nigeria. Those people are not any smarter than you and I. But it takes the right group of economic leadership, and we develop new sectors, and that will drive revenue growth. It will. If we invest in tourism, ecotourism, people will come visit, they will come spend their dollars and the euros and the pounds, it will drive revenue. If we focus in agriculture, it will create jobs, we'll feed ourselves, there'll be less money going out to buy rice and other ingredients, it will drive revenue growth. These are all the buckets of activities that we will look at and we can drive our revenues growth. So let's not limit ourselves, but we'll put numbers to it.
Right. So agriculture.
No Liberians should think it is not possible. It is.
Right. No, I believe too is possible. It's just that we can really see. But let's look at agriculture, for instance, because sometimes we don't get specifics, and I don't expect you tonight to give me specific. But I just want to throw some things out there, because when we say agriculture, what exactly are we looking at? Are we looking at, say, for instance, rice? We eat rice, and we really think we should grow rice, right? But maybe we don't have to. We can grow cashew, for instance, or we can grow flowers, and based on that, sell it and buy rice. Have you ever thought about what to do differently when it comes to agriculture?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question, because that's exactly what I think we need to do. We need to look at the whole, what I call the value chain of growing any crop, whether it's rice, it's cocoa, it's spices, whatever else, and decide where do we have competitive advantage. And where we have competitive advantage is where is the kind of crops we should grow. And exactly to your point, if we look at rice in detail, it might be, I'm not saying it is, it might be cheaper to actually import rice than to grow it. And we need to do that's the whole value chain of rice production. And because we eat so much rice for national security reasons, if it makes sense, if we do the economics, and it makes sense to import rice because it's what we eat, then you can have a security stock of rice. And other countries do this. The Americans do it with oil. I think the Nigerians do it with maybe rice or cassava or something like that. You have warehouses where, for security reasons, you want to have a supply of rice, 4 months, 6, whatever it is, and you rotate it, you keep refreshing it, you get it in and out to the market, because it makes more sense to grow cashews or to grow spices. You can get more money. And so the difference between what you sell the cashew for, you can buy rice and still make a profit. and still
Yeah.
feed your people. So yes, we need to look at agriculture in that sense, right? And decide what makes sense. And if it makes sense to grow rice, we should, by the way, because that's what we consume.
Right. Right.
Or we may decide knowing deliberately that even maybe at the margins, it might be more expensive to do it in Liberia, but we still want to do it because the difference is not that much and it provides security for us. So let's grow our own rice. But those kind of analysis we need to do to decide where we want to put our agricultural dollars.
So, Mr. Cummings, you keep mentioning we need to look at it. Are you not looking at these things right now? And who are the people on your team? Let's say if you have some brainstorming to do on agriculture, on health, on finance, economics, who are your go-to persons?
So we have a few people who are working with us on each of those teams. Many of them, some are either in government today or they have contracts or relationships with government that unfortunately in our country, disclosing their names and stuff means they will be punished or they will be fired or they will use their contracts and all that sort of stuff. So we are very, what's the word? We're very cautious about disclosing. For example, look, I'm an investor in two small companies in Liberia. I don't make that public because I fear those companies will be targeted. And so there is a small team, not in all of those areas. That's something we still are working on, we're building upon. But what's important for people to know is that we're thinking about those areas. We have ideas about those areas. Some work have been done about those areas. And we are continuing to get into more detail around what we'll be doing specifically in all of those pockets of activities.
There's an increase in rape and extreme violence against women. Recently, there was a roadmap by the government, and in spite of that, this is rape and SGBV is it's on the rise. What concrete step again a Cummings administration will put in place to help reduce the violence against women?
Yeah, so first of all, what I would say, Dennis, is sometimes we get too what I call clinical and too dispassionate when we talk about this rape and sexual and gender-based violence. And I just want to remind your listening audience that we're talking about people here, talking about women, young girls, as young as 2, 3 years old getting raped, 13 years old, and the stories are just atrocious. So I don't want to get into the details without reminding our audience what we're talking about here. This is real lives that are being shattered completely. And I also want to remind your listening audience, our listening audience, is that Liberian men should be embarrassed when you look at the statistics because we are the perpetrators of this violence. And so shame on every Liberian man who does this or who looks the other way when a friend, a colleague, or somebody does this. And important for us to just ground this in the human side of this thing. Now, when we get to what needs to be done, there's no one thing, there's no silver bullet here to solve this issue. There's a list of things that we need to do to intervene. We need to, first of all, everybody who commits these crimes need to have in the back of their mind that there will be consequences, that they will be punished. Because part of the issue in Liberia today is that, I mentioned earlier, impunity around everything. And so every boy, man who creates one of these crimes needs to understand that there will be punishment at the end of the tunnel. One. And to do that, it means we got to make sure we're implementing just existing laws around rape, and the justice system is prepared to do that. We have to make sure we are not victimizing the young women, not just young, but women who get raped, right? We got to make sure the medical facilities are there to make sure we get the evidence and to treat them with care, etc. But even more importantly, I think though, we got to do all of those things. We got to start working with communities and families, because many communities, many families, we say, oh, that your uncle did it, or your brother, or your father, don't bring shame. We got to have these conversations with communities, with families that no, this is not acceptable. We gotta give people, coach and help young women talk about this and tell us when this is happening again, and make sure we have homes for them to go to so they're not re-victimized in their homes. So it's something that we got to look at comprehensively. There are all of these buckets of activities that we got to do to fix this issue. But we should not underestimate the need to work with families and communities to really make the behavior unacceptable. And again, to let people know that you commit this crime, you will be punished. You will not. And so these are all areas that we need to do differently if we want to improve this. And this is one we shouldn't wait. We encourage the government to start working on everything, but on this area for sure.
Have you ever thought about what is causing this? What is driving the numbers up? It could be mental health issue, could be policing issue, could be poverty, high crimes rate. What have been your thought around what's driving this?
Yeah, I don't know specifically, and I don't want to pretend to. I think all of those are prevailing factors, right? And those are all areas that need to be addressed in mental health, challenges. I don't know how poverty contributes to that, to be honest. So for me, that can't be an excuse, right? But mental health, for sure, perhaps is a contributor. And this is why I think you need a systematic approach to how you solve this issue. And there's no one single bullet that will solve it. We have to take a holistic approach to this.
What is the role of the press, and how will a Cummings administration enable and nurture press freedom?
There's a reason why the press is called the fourth estate, because in a democracy, you need a free and independent press, because they help hold government officials accountable. They help hold society, not just government, accountable. Whether you talk about this rape issue or any other issue, the press has a pivotal role to play in such a democracy. And so, in a Cummings-led administration, the press will be unfettered. We will focus on transparency. So we will make sure Liberians know what we're doing, why we're doing, sequencing what we're doing. There will be full transparency. There will be full access, from the press. When we grow the economy, when the economy is thriving, the press will thrive, because businesses will advertise. The press will become independent. They will not be dependent on government. See, everything is dependent on government. If we grow the private sector, which is something we haven't talked about, but something I know how to do, something I'm focused on, everybody reduces their dependence on government. The government will have less sway over the press, because the press is not depending on government for their survival. And this is why, directly, indirectly, we will be supporting press freedom by growing the economy. And the press will be able to generate their own revenues, irrespective of dependence on government, because private sector is what funds. And then as Liberians become more prosperous, they get jobs, they get incomes, they will also fund the press. They will be able to pay for the subscriptions and all of these things that will continue to foster and support an independent press. But again, the press is the fourth estate for a reason. And through all of these actions, we will make sure our transparency, support, no intimidation, and then growing the private sector so the press can become truly independent is how we'll make sure the press holds the country accountable for the right behaviors and actions.
Speaking about press freedom or the role of the media, if you watch our discourse on the internet, mainly through the media, you will see that there are a number of these media institutions or talk shows that thrive on noise, on insults, and complete outright vulgarity. And as a result, or some say the G's and the fries, as a result, they pull a lot of numbers. our leaders now on both sides, being a pro-government opposition, they flock to these kind of shows because they quote unquote pull the numbers, right? So in a way, our leaders, they participate in the deterioration, the decay, and the decadence of the very fabric of our society. Because these people make the louder noise, so they are being catered to by our leadership. How do we expect to build institutions if those who crowd foul, those who use vulgar language, are the one getting all the attention from our leaders?
Yeah, look, that's a challenge, and I'll speak for myself. Again, I remind people I'm not perfect, but I also try to be careful on what I say, how I say it. I try to set the example by my own tonality. I also encourage our and my supporters in the advocacy to be more positive and not to sort of pull people down, not always successfully being able to control them. I think you're right that we as political leaders and other leaders should be very careful on the mediums we support, because I can't disagree with you if we want to change the dialogue, the discourse, and yes, we're catering to the people who are fostering that, we are defeating ourselves, and it will not change the dialogue and discourse. So I think it's a good what's the word, advocacy, or a good point to all of us to be aware and more conscious of whose talk show we go on and say, because we are indirectly, supporting the sort of discourse. And again, I'm not perfect in that sense, but I think for the most part, I I try to be careful on whose talk show I go on and who we work with and that sort of stuff, for some of the reasons you suggest.
Let me ask you this one, but I know our time is fast spent. But there's a proliferation of substandard schools in Liberia. We cannot hide this fact anymore. People are graduating from college, and some can't even distinguish the personal pronoun I and ARE. These degree granting institutions, some, I won't be surprised if a school in Liberia is awarding PhD now. Is the National Commission on Higher Education a viable and efficient agency to take care of these issues? And what will a coming presidency do when it comes to higher education and this some standard school system that we see?
So I guess the answer to your first question is, clearly the National Higher Education Institute is not doing what it should be doing based on what we have today. I mean, so it's just a fact. We can't deny that is not the case. Um, but what we would do, though, again, I believe is a question of focusing and making choices. We will identify a few institutions to start with, uh, and we will make sure those institutions are funded so they can have the right quality of staffing, the right equipment, the right facilities, so we can upgrade the standards. If I said to you, we'll try to do it everywhere and solve all the problems on day one, that would be untrue. That would not happen. So we'll need to identify, starting with the University of Liberia, because it's the premier government institution of higher learning, perhaps TU in the Southeast, but we'll identify a few of these institutions where we'll focus on and upgrade the standards to where they need to be, all right? And then progressively we'll get to other institutions. We will make sure the standards are enforced. So in addition to these government institutions that we will make sure have what they need, when the standards are set, we will make sure that the private institutions follow those standards. And if they don't, we'll have to shut those institutions down. Uh, Again, that will take time, but it will happen. We'll have to do it progressively. We will not be chaotic about how we go about it, but we will go about it in the right way so that over time we can improve the standards. But everybody will know the benchmark. Everybody will know the standards, and then we'll progressively enforce the standards. Even the capacity, Dennis, to get released to enforce it on day one is not there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Let's set the goal. It may be 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, 36 months, whatever it is. We'll set a goal, we'll set a realistic target, and we'll work towards it, and we'll progressively get there. But if anybody I tell you we'll solve it overnight, we'll shut everything down, blah, 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 that will be untrue. Because even the capacity to actually do that, to set the standards, to enforce it, will take time to do. But that's something we'll do, we'll work towards. And again, we'll pick some institutions, some model institutions to set the example so people can actually see and feel. So it's not just talking. You can actually go, you see the quality. Look, we have a STEM school on Duper Road. Not great, not perfect facilities. But again, in relative terms, the school and the quality of the students and the quality of education and the teachers. I tell people whenever I get a bit, discouraged, I go and visit the school, and it reminds me why we're doing this, because these kids are so smart, they're so intelligent.
Yeah.
And I leave there inspired and say, we gotta work harder to create more of these institutions for our students around the country.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cummins. I've been very greedy. I alone asking all the questions because this is your first time. So, and still, I didn't even get in half of my questions. So we want to have you back as your schedule may permit. But thank you so much for coming. Our audience do have a lot of questions, but I'm sorry, this is all the time we have. And I'll be asking you for your closing comments.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. And I will come back. I enjoy the conversations. And I thank you for respecting the time. We agreed to 90 minutes, and it's 11:30 in Monrovia. But my closing comments is sort of, I guess, three things I want to leave our audience with. One is that Liberia can change. We need a new way. Liberia will be 174 years old in a few weeks, and what we have today as a country is not something we should accept. And I keep saying we can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. And I think as I travel around the country, I'm encouraged that more and more Liberians want something different. They want a new way. They know we need to transform our country. And I encourage all Liberians to keep thinking that way. Let's not settle. Let's push each other. Liberia will not change because we make each other comfortable. Liberia will only change if we challenge each other, we push each other to do more and better. Second message I'd like to leave Liberians with is, I know things are difficult, things are challenging, but to be optimistic. We are resilient people, we are tenacious people, and we can change our country, and we will change our country. And then lastly, I just remind Liberians to take the COVID virus seriously, coronavirus, and protect yourselves. Stopping the spread is the key. So wear your mask, hold your nose and mouth, wash your hands, social distance, get tested when you feel bad. And when vaccines are available, take the vaccines. But let's take COVID seriously. Let's defeat it. Like we defeated Ebola. And I know we can and will as a people. So thank you for the opportunity. And we will come back, Dennis, and spend more time with you, and then take questions from your audience as well.
Definitely. Thank you so much. I want to thank our audience, even those that are watching now and those who will watch later. Always keep it here at Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. Until then, from all of us here at Focus on Liberia, we say thank you so much for watching. We never close our broadcast without playing the song that says, "We are all Liberians." Why? Whether you are Gio, Mano, Crown, Mandingo, or Congo, we are all Liberians. Whether you support Ellis Cummings, Joseph Boakai, George Weah, or me, we are all Liberians, and we should do whatever it takes to make Liberia that glorious land of liberty. Good night, and God bless you.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.